All right, welcome to this video demo on how to do mandalas in Adobe Photoshop. So if you have downloaded the PDF, we are going to be following the PDF. So you may want to kind of put that in on one of your side windows to pull up as you go on. You also downloaded the CAT zip file, so you have assets to work with. So we're going to start off with making a new document, and it's going to be 8 by 8 inches, 300 dpi, and I'm just going to start off with a white background, and I'm going to create. I'm just going to make this a little bit larger to fill the frame. I have my rulers up, and I'm just going to go to Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials, so everything kind of, I might get rid of this, Library tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some guides to work off because we want to make sure we're working kind of correctly. So what I like to do is find my center point. Now the PDF has you kind of do a free transform, etc. to set it up. But if we're working in a square format, we should be easily be able to find it. So if we're doing 8 by 8, if you're doing 10 by 10, 12 by 12, it's very easy to do that. Now you can click and drag to find guides, but you can go to View, New Guide. And you may have seen me do this on your own computers, but I like knowing exactly where everything is supposed to go. So let's go to New Guide, vertical and horizontal. We're doing 4 inches. So that is our center point, and here's our 4 quadrants. So the next step is requiring you guys to kind of be accurate based on these measurements. So if you did not do 8 by 8, if you did 9 by 9, you have to do half points. You can't just say, well, I did 9 by 9, but she said by 4 by 4. That your measurements are going to be off. So do half of your square. If you're doing a rectangle, try to find the center point. So this is where you pull in your math. So it's half of the width and half of the length when you put your lines there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm just going to make a brand new layer. And 1 second. Alright, so we're going to take our elliptical marquee tool. Now this requires a little bit of precision, so I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit, and you're going to take your selection, and I'm placing it right on top of my guides. It's a little crazy, but this requires really good precision, and we'll be able to adjust this in a moment. So you're going to hold down the Alt or Option key and the Shift at the same time. So my hands are on that keyboard. I'm clicking and I'm dragging out. And I have a circle. It's not a big one, but I have a circle. So what I'm going to do while it's like this, I'm going to do a Command T. I'm going to do I can't do anything yet, so I'm going to do a right click. That's my pupper in the background. I'm going to default my colors. Right click. Stroke. And it's going to pull up your stroke menu. Remember, strokes are for the outside. I don't need 10 pixels. I'm going to do 4 on the outside. Hit OK. It's going to give me an outline. Let's do a Command T. And one thing to notice, so we have pixels here, and this is how you know if you're accurate. Now, 300 dpi, so 300 times 4 is 1200. If these two are 1200, great. If they're not, erase them and put 1200 pixels here and here. If you're doing 8 by 8 inches, if you're doing 10 by 10, take 300 times 5, so that would be 1500. so on and so forth. So you need to do some simple math. Remember, we're using 300 ppi for this. So that is awesome. So we know that that is good. And all right, so that one is good. So we're just going to hit OK. Deselect. So with this, we're going to do a Command J. Command J is copy. Command T. Hold down Alt or Option and the Shift key. If I'm using 2012, so I don't have to hold down the Shift key. It's a little weird. But you're going to add some more lines. So you can grow this by percentages, by with this. So I could say, you know, I want this to be 125. Percent. Confirm. And you can do Command J, Command T, and I can just kind of keep growing 125%. Now the outlines are going, the stroke sizes are going to change. This isn't so much a big deal because we're just trying to keep this as a guide so that we can work on. So again, another Command J, Command T, and you don't have to follow this percentage. It's going to be like a lot of lines, and as you notice, the spacing between increases. So you may want to think about that as you go on. But this is just sort of a guide for us to go on. And I may actually go back to this first one, Command J, Command T, and I may go to 75. Command J, Command T, shrink it down. Command J, Command T. Alright, so now I have all of these lines. What I'm going to do is we're going to do something a little destructive. Is I'm going to select the top layer and the bottom. Remember, I did not work on that bottom layer. If you worked on the bottom layer, that background layer, you need to start all over. So I'm going to do a Command E, which is going to flatten, and I'm just going to rename the layer Circles. So now we have a kind of a bullseye. Yours may be a little bit more in depth, yours maybe not so much. These are sort of relational guides. So we're on that step 3, which is the second page. And we're gonna make some lines for us to measure off. Now we're gonna kind of just be self-measuring. And a lot of this is sort of thinking about where things are. So if something's in the third quadrant, you would put it in, you know, every third quadrant. So what we're going to do, and I'm just going to lock this circles layer for now. Alright, so we're going to make a new layer. And if you go under your marquee tools, we're going to find the single row marquee tools. And we're going to take the horizontal one and we're just going to put it, we may have to zoom in, I'm doing a Command plus. So we're going to have a 2-pixel line. So you see where it's kind of marching. You're going to right click, fill with black. We're just going to fill foreground color, and under that line, right click, fill foreground color. So it's a 2-pixel line. Command D to deselect, and we're going to zoom out. Alright, so now we have some lines. So we're going to do a Command J. We're going to do a Command T. What we're going to do is while this is connected, again, we have this at the 1200 point. We're going to we're going to uncheck to make sure they're not going together. So if you have this checked where they're going to be proportionate or not going to be proportionate, we're going to take the W for the width to 130%. You know what? I'm going to take that to 140%. As you know, it's making a little bit larger than the selection. That's okay. We're going to hit the check mark for confirm. We're actually going to do that Command T again. And we're going to rotate 22.5 degrees. Now we're looking at a circle. Circle's 360 degrees. So how many pie slices you want, you have to take that number and divide it by 360. So we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 pie slices. So we have this line. We're going to take this angle here. We're going to do it 22.5, check. We're going to do another Command J, Command T, take this angle, 22.5. Check. And you're going to do this until it goes all the way around. So Command J, Command T. All right, so now we have our lines, and we're going to take all these lines, layer 1 through whatever, copy. We're going to do a Command E, rename it to lines. We're going to lock this layer, and I'm actually going to shift both and click this little folder icon to group them and rename them to guides. So that way I'm able to self-measure off everything. So yours may be a little weird or a little different than mine. That's okay. So right now we're going to prep our assets. So what we have is I have a bunch of cat PNGs. PNGs, you have the full color, but you can have transparencies. And these I prepped the other day, or this morning, and I used masking, saved them as a PNG. And this is going to save you so much time and have smaller file sizes. Now this is a destructive edit, so keep that in mind. Usually I don't like doing that, but for this purpose, we're going to work with this. And if you're curious on, wow, how do I get a really good PNG? We're going to take our skitter critters, open them into Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to do a quick mask. It's okay. Remember, I don't have to be perfect. I'm just going to select and mask. And I'm actually going to go on to overlay. That's my best way. Take this guy here. I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option to be like, yeah, I don't want this. And stuff you do want. Just using the quick mask function within the select and mask tool. Alright, so now I'm going to kind of zoom in, and I'm going to take this brush and maybe anything that isn't that pinky color. Remember, you can change that overlay. It's kind of hard because the ears are a little pinky. I can add in, so the nose was lost, so we're going to get that nose back. And this part I don't want, so I can just kind of I'm just being a little loose here and I'm not getting super accurate. You know, just kind of getting what we don't want gone. Now I'm going to take my feathering and I'm just going to go around the outside where you have those little white spots. If you had a white background, it kind of smartly adds and removes. And this isn't the most accurate, but I found this to be pretty good. I may actually go in over here. Make sure these lines are gone. Make sure to get this eyeball. Back to my feather. Just make sure I'm not getting those kind of weird white artifacts that may happen when you're doing a mask. It will give a little bit more of a natural look. Especially if you're taking the same object and repeating it throughout, you're gonna want to make sure where it looks its best. Alright, so I'm gonna go new layer, layer mask. Now I just want to make sure before I do anything, image size, that's 72 up to 300. We'll file, save as. 2 cats, mice. Take this over to a PNG file and hit save, large file size. So it might be a good time to pause and try this yourself. And if you had a little trouble, go back. It's good practice to practice masking and always go back to see if you can make a PNG file. And you may want to save your PSD if you decide to go back and edit something. Alright, so going back to our guides, we have all of our images here. And we're going to add in our first assets. So I'm going to look through, and I'm actually going to start off with this cat toy, feather toy. So I'm just going to click and drag, and you can see I have that little plus sign. I can just add it in. And I'm going to actually make sure it's 100%, click OK. And see this little element? That means that it is a smart object. We want to make sure everything is a smart object. And if yours didn't automatically come into a smart object, you may want to correct it. So I may want this little cat toy to be on every quadrant. So yeah, like that. I think that might be good, where it just kind of fits really nicely in. Might do the keyboard. Actually might scale it down a bit. Because it's a smart object, I can adjust the scaling as much as possible. So the next part is really think about reflecting, refracting, and understanding your transform tools. So I'm going to first start off with the Command T. And mine doesn't have a little nodule for me to kind of adjust. So because I'm on 2019. If I had 2018, I would have a little symbol in there for it. And if you look at the PDF, it kind of shows you this little center point crosshair. But what I'm going to do is type in the anchor point. All right, one moment. So after a quick Googling, I figured out what was happening, and you know, sometimes things happen to all of us here. So I have my feather toy, and I want to move it. So I'm going to hit a Command T, and I have this little check mark that's hidden, but it gives me this anchor point. As you can see, it's this crosshair. I'm going to move it outside of the bounding box. You need to move it outside the bounding box. It doesn't really matter where, just outside the box. That way we can readjust to wherever this bounding box is going to be. I might actually scale it down a little so it's a little smaller and place them exactly where I want to be. So once my little crosshair bounding box is outside the bounding box, I'm going to reset this to be the direct center, which we've already determined to be 1200. Thank you for bearing with me. It does work when I type it in, so it might just be a little bit of a bug. So I made this width and height 1200. It's the direct center, and as you can see, I can swing it on this axis. So I'm actually going to cancel and do a Command J to start all over again. Command T. I'm going to take this center anchor point out, type in 1200, and we can just, as you see, it can swing, it swings on this center axis. Now, you want to kind of think about how often do you want it to swing. So if you want to think about your pie slices, so we want it to be multiple times. So maybe I do 90. Oh, that's the height. Just thinking on that. Not 1000%. We're going to stick with 100. And it's thinking on it. Right, so we Command J, Command T. We're going to confirm for this checkpoint, pull it out. 1200, 1200. Tab, tab. So if we want this to be 45 degrees, you can kind of see how it happens when you move it. And see like different elements what happens. So I might do it 45, Command J, Command T, take this anchor point out, $45, $45, $90. And since I had these three kind of grouped together, maybe I will group these guys, Command J, Command T, take this anchor point out, maybe I'll do 60. But you can kind of group several of them together. Kind of take an arrangement around. Alright, so I can take my feather toys, head them all, group them, type feather. So then I might say, you know what, I'm going to take this fish, click and add it, right there, and I'm just going to make sure it is on that line. We're trying to do self-measuring. Because this kind of cat toy was an odd shape, it wasn't quite what I wanted. And I might choose this y-axis to be right there, and that's sort of the center point, and hit confirm. Now I want to reflect it. So I can do a Command J. If I go to Edit, Transform, you have some of these tools. So I can rotate, skew, distort, etc. But I can do a Command T, right click, and I have more options down here. And I can flip horizontal and take my fish over there. And I may want to think about, okay, where does it measure off over there? At y-axis the same, and think, okay, so this is touching, that's center there, and I'm just kind of nudging it just to think about where it is lining up with each other in the other elements. And I can hit there, and I have my two fish, and I've measured them there, and I might even do a select both, Command J will copy them both, free transform, and since it's kind of centering in on that axis, pulling down Shift, and I have my fish there. That's another way that you can go around. You can take this cat tree, and I might use these angles so it is there. Command J, Command T. Take this point, pull it to 1200 by 1200. And see if I do 45 there, and I can just kind of do two at a time. Now, this didn't work quite well because I didn't remove the axis. So I might take this to 0, to zero it out, take this to 1200. Now, since I didn't take it out, I didn't want to work it. So these are common mistakes you're going to run into. So you're going to take the center point, pull it out of that box. I'm actually going to hold down Shift as I rotate and it's going to kind of keep things constrained. I can actually select all of these trees. To save myself time, Command J, Command T, rotate it around. Take on my cat trees, and I'm not flattening these because I may decide, you know what, I don't like how my cat poles look, so I may start that over. But grouping your layers is going to be your best friend. And I can kind of quickly reorder and rearrange. And I can turn off my guides. Actually put my cat tree there. And you can see I'm kind of building something out. Remember, you have to have an object in the center. So I want you guys to spend a little time playing around with reflecting, rotating. Play around with the transform tools, and maybe there's some other ones. And I may actually try to get, remember, anything you can do, so I can even play around with, you know, different opacities, different things, to really kind of add some depth to my image besides it just being a bunch of stuff kind of over each other. So definitely have fun and practice so you get comfortable with this, and good luck.